Welcome to Sparks of History, where world history and Jewish history meet. We're honored to have with us today Professor Edward Larson. Professor Larson holds the Hugh and Hazel Darling Chair in Law and is University Professor of History at Pepperdine University. Professor Larson is the author of numerous works on American history, and he is a recipient of the highly prestigious Pulitzer Prize in History. Today, we will hear about Professor Larson's fascinating book on Benjamin Franklin and George Washington, titled Franklin and Washington, the Founding Partnership. Thank you again, Professor Larson, for being with us here today. To start off, tell us, please, a little bit about your background and how you became interested in Washington and Franklin.
Well, I'm a historian, of course, taught history for years, for over 2 decades. And among that, I would teach the general survey as well as the period that covered the Revolution. And when I look at history, I try to, when I'm doing the broad sweep of history, what seem to be gaps in the scholarship, because I read closely what literature is out there. And there's some historians who take a topic and because of maybe writing skill, they end up doing a better job with it. But what I tend to look for is where there seem to be gaps or openings. For example, the book that won the Pulitzer Prize was on the Scopes trial, which is a well-known event in American history, and is often used as an example of something that changed, had a profound future impact. In that case, maybe launching the culture wars or redefining ideas of individual liberty or church and state. And yet I had known that a historian had never written a book about it. There had been movies and novels and short stories and plays, Broadway plays about it, but no historian had ever tackled it. So the idea of tackling it using the skills of a historian, well, it ended up working. Nobody had done it before, and it attracted a lot of attention and ended up receiving the Pulitzer Prize with that one. And so I'd gotten involved with some topics in the Revolutionary period the same way, because I teach those. And the first one is actually sort of a blow-by-blow description of the election of 1800. Everybody always heard about that one. It's a big American election, Jefferson versus Adams. But no historian had ever sort of tackled it at a blow-by-blow level. They dealt with it in concept, but not as a practical event. And that ended up winning prizes and getting a lot of attention. And I did another one on George Washington, covering the period of his life that nobody ever talks about after he stepped down as general and before he became president, called The Return of George Washington. And this was similar to that, in the sense that I've always been a great admirer of both George Washington and of Ben Franklin, 2 great Americans. They were universally regarded, both at the time and ever after by historians, as the 2 most important people in the American Revolution, the only 2 people that were indispensable to American independence, both the success of the Revolution and then of the Constitutional Convention. No one else, by any means, ever reaches that category. There are other important people, Jefferson or Adams or Hamilton. There's certainly other important